What is a page object pattern? The page object pattern is a design pattern used in test automation that separates the web page objects from the test code. This pattern helps in reducing the code redundancy and maintenance effort by separating the page objects and related operations into a separate class or module. How do you implement page object model in your test automation framework? To implement the page object model, we create a separate class for each web page, containing elements and related operations of that page. We also create a separate class for each test case, where we use the page objects to perform the required actions and verify the results. What are the advantages of using page object model? The advantages of using page object model are improved code reusability and maintainability, reduced code redundancy, better test script organization and readability, easy to maintain and update page object classes without impacting test scripts, improved test automation framework scalability and extensibility. What are the basic elements of a page object class? The basic elements of a page object class are web elements and their related operations. Web elements are the UI components of a web page, such as buttons, text fields, links, and drop-downs. Related operations are the actions that can be performed on those elements, such as clicking a button, entering text in a text field, selecting an option from a drop-down, etc. How do you handle dynamic elements in page object model? To handle dynamic elements in page object model, we can use different techniques such as using explicit waits to wait for the element to become visible or interactable, using relative locators to locate elements based on their relation with other elements on the page, using regular expressions in locators to match dynamic parts of element attributes such as IDs, names, or classes. How do you handle iframes in page object model? To handle iframes in page object model, we can switch to the iframe context using the driver.switch_to.frame method and perform the required actions on the elements inside the iframe. Once we are done with the actions inside the iframe, we can switch back to the default content using driver.switch_to.default_content. How do you organize your page object classes in a large-scale project? In a large-scale project, we can organize our page object classes in a hierarchical structure based on the web page hierarchy. For example, we can have a base page object class containing common elements and operations used across multiple pages, and then create subclasses for each web page. We can also create subclasses for each component or section of a web page and inherit them in the main page class. How do you handle pop-up windows in page object model? To handle pop-up windows in page object model, we can use the driver.switch_to.window method to switch to the pop-up window context and perform the required actions. Once we are done with the actions in the pop-up window, we can switch back to the main window context using driver.switch_to.window. How do you perform cross-browser testing using page object model? To perform cross-browser testing using page object model, we can create separate page object classes for each browser, and use the appropriate page object class based on the browser being used. We can also use a cross-browser testing tool such as Selenium Grid to run the same test cases on different browsers and platforms. How do you handle synchronization issues in page object model? To handle synchronization issues in page object model, we can use explicit waits to wait for the element to become visible or interactable before performing any action on it. We can also use implicit waits to set a default timeout for all element interactions. Additionally, we can use polling and retrying.